Thank you. We will now take comments from the public. Would anyone like to address us?
For taking me first, I'm at 7:30 on the other side of town.
Oh, then I'll let you know when you're done.
Yeah, right. Just a few words tonight. I know bonding, I think, is back on your agenda again tonight. I just want to reiterate that in light of the current budgets and what will be coming up on the June agenda in the Common Council, that we do all know the way the bonding is worded now for the the bonds not requiring a referendum, that in fact there is no limit on the number of times that a mayor can bring forth those bonds. I have no problem with the current year's budget that was put out after you'd already approved $2.5 million, so we kind of saw that coming. So, but in fact, it could be next year or another mayor, $2.5 million times 10 times 20. So I really think you need to seriously consider putting an annual lid on there. The second item I wanted to address this evening was just to correct some testimony that was given in their last meeting after the public spoke. There is no ordinance prohibiting any land use commissioner from attending another land use commission. In fact, a number of us do it frequently. If there's a project coming up that's going to be coming before our commission, we'll go and see what's going on in zoning or EIC. And one of the reasons for that, to be sure the testimony we received is the same as given to the other commissions. But on the communications issue that was raised, there is absolutely no prohibition from a planning or a zoning commissioner from attending the other meetings. Testifying before those commissions is a different issue, as you can readily imagine. But just to correct that, there is ample opportunity for any commissioner on any of the other commissions to attend and listen to testimonies on those commissions. That's all I have for this thing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any questions from anybody? Bill, thank you. Anybody else from the public that would like to remain seated and address us if she would prefer?
Actually, I have a few things. Oh, goodness. Again, I'd like to ask you to put the cap on how much the mayor can bond or take out in notes without going to the public for their approval. It scares me to give anyone that much access to the pocketbooks of the taxpayers. Please cap how much they can have access to. I'm really concerned when you're giving them $2.5 million if we start tying that together. Heaven help all of us. My taxes went up 20% this year, and I don't know how I'm going to afford to stay in this town. Two, can any authority bond money with the full faith and backing of the city, or is it only the parking authority? How much can they borrow with our backing, without our knowledge? Can you put a limit on this? I know you're going to talk about term limits at some point. If you increase the terms to 4 years, please put a 2-year term limit. If you increase a mayor or anybody's election period to 4 years, please limit it to 2 so that they would serve 8 years. And if you leave it at the 2-year term, I'd like to see the limited 4 terms, so it would also come out to 8 years. I believe the longer a mayor serves, the less in touch with the people he is elected to serve. He is less in touch with them. You may say that they have elections to throw the bum out, but rarely does that happen. People are so busy working on foods and meds and living expenses that most people don't have or know about the issues, let alone go out and vote. Just look at the numbers of how many people voted in the local elections. I'm not saying it's right. I'm only saying that's how it is. I'd like to bring up the planning and zoning again. I'm not sure that the combination of elected and appointed commissions is a good idea or would work. Most of the towns that have the combined commissions are much smaller in population than in Danbury. I would like the commissioners to go to the sites before they make decisions which affect the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Sounds simple, but it's something they never do or hardly ever do. And then to get to the plan of conservation and development. This is this plan of conservation and development that I can't carry it any longer. that Mr. Elpern was mentioning, and he mentioned the fact that in the Plan of Conservation and Development, it had said to put the two commissions together, planning and zoning. I spent a little while, last week or so, looking it up. The suggestion to join these commissions was 2 paragraphs and 2 sentences in that whole book. Easily overlooked when reading the plan, easily overlooked when voting on the plan. Mr. Elpern said he thought I was probably one of the few that read the whole thing, and I did, and I spoke against it at the time. I still am against putting it together. If you would like to read the 2 paragraphs, they're marked here in blue. I'll leave it up here so you can look through it if you would like. And as for city clerk, I am disappointed that the hour of the day that I am in the city hall, and granted I come in early, I'm usually here 8:30 to 9 in the morning, that the office is not open. I go for information concerning council agendas or backup documentation, and no one is ever there at that hour. I realize it's an elected official and no set working hours, but for the salary the taxpayers are paying yearly, I think it's an office that should be manned either by a clerk or by a civil servant hired to serve the council's need during the normal working hours. In the past, there have been 2 covering the office, and one of them is usually always there. In this case, it is not the case. There's hardly anyone there in the early morning hours. And there are things, I mean, if you attend the council meetings, they will not read minutes because everyone has a copy, and there are copies in the city clerk's office that you can read. You can't get in to read them. So I'm not sure that I like the fact that that office is hardly ever open early. You also plan to talk about the treasurer at some point. I like having someone in that position. I feel better having someone double check all the offices here, the finance office and whatever. The more eyes watching, the better as far as I'm concerned. So I hope you don't decide to do away with the treasurer. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Mrs. Waller, could I borrow that book?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
I want it back at some point.
I'm sorry, I do have a question, Ms. Waller. So you're not submitting the whole plan to us, you're submitting the 2 pages you have marked?
I'm not really submitting any of it. It's just that is the Plan of Conservation and Development that Dennis talked about. I'm sure he has a copy you all could get for your records, but that is mine. And I wanted to bring in to show you that even though it is in there to put planning and zoning together, it's 2 paragraphs and 2 sentences in that entire book.
Is that marked?
Yes,
Yeah.
they're marked with the blue.
You want me to get a copy of it? I was going to read it.
Well, no. Okay,
Okay.
yeah, why not?
Oh, those pages? or-
Yes, just those pages.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? Margaret, would you like to?
Margaret Mitchell,
Yeah.
Park Place in Danbury. I read everything too, but I got the executive summary. So the copy that Lynn Waller got had 2 paragraphs. My copy had 2 sentences. And every sentence in here has a lot of impact. But at the time this occurred, and I sit and take a lot of notes, I wrote down that it wasn't of concern if we didn't approve it. It was a plan. And that therefore it was going to have more due process. And in the future, we would get to add our comments again about whether we liked the plan suggestions. So that many of these things have gone to the zoning board. Combining the plan, 2 planning and zoning boards has come to you. And there is due process in all these things. Frankly, Lynn Waller and I and my husband were maybe the only people that read it. He had these left over. That's how few people were interested. I thought it was like the charter, very key to the whole community, so I was just amazed that no one cared how we were going to chart the future of the city and that we had to update this every 10 years. I think we sort of get the best of both worlds, and that people that will run for election have a different personality than people that will serve on a committee. You all came in as volunteers, you didn't run for election, and you're all very dedicated and very good. I think the planning board is dedicated and good. Granted, if the mayor doesn't appoint a good planning board, we wouldn't have a good planning board. And so issue after issue here has been an issue of trust to me. Whether you trust the mayor to do the bonding or to put the people on the boards, or it's a great deal of trust that goes on in representative government, and that not everything happens in the election. We don't elect him czar, we elect him mayor, no matter who he is. And I like the two systems. I think they could be retrained and regrouped and do it as one. But I do like having, the people on zoning are more salesman orientated and can sell themselves in an election, and maybe the people on planning, I guess, are more, they read every word of this and are more intellectual. I object still to not having some cap or some limit on how many times you can dip into $2.5 million. Granted, that's the only thing I get to vote on as a non-resident is the bonding. But there's a real reason for that, because you want to limit your debt and how much debt you have for the future. And the taxes are supposed to handle the 1 year's budget and not carry you on forever. And the debt is a big commitment for years and years and years, and that's why someone like me is allowed to vote. And I would still like the bonding to go to referendum at a very low figure so that I can vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Would anybody else like to address us? Yes.
Elise Marciano, 179 Long Ridge Road, Danbury, Connecticut. I have two things that I'd just like to talk about. First of all, term limits. I think that's a very slippery slope, because you do get rid of the bad guys as well as the good guys. And I think that's something that you really have to give a lot of thought to. You know, this is a free society, and I think people who will run for office should be able to run. And I think the voters should be able to vote them out if they want to get rid of them. But that's your decision, and I don't envy any of you that one. The other thing I would like to talk about is the bonding, the cap on the bonding. I think that to allow any mayor to have carte blanche on $2.5 million without any kind of stopping it, whether it's a month, a year, by situation, is asking for trouble, because it's just going to add to the taxpayer's burden. And I think that in the long run, it's going to be in the wrong hands. The wrong mayor could be a disaster. And I want to thank you all for all the time and effort that you put into this. It's certainly a credit to you, each one of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions or comments, anybody? Okay. Anybody else like to address the commission? Good. Then I think we'll move on to our agenda. Okay, our first agenda item will be, we will review and discuss language from Mr. Gottschalk. And what do you have, Mr. Gottschalk?
I have a handout.
That's the spirit. We were looking forward to that.
When you met last, you asked me to prepare a draft of a preamble, and I had several suggestions that I tried to incorporate in this. First, I started with Commissioner Buzade's language. To that, I added Bob King's comments that he had originally proposed as a separate section 1-4. Next, I drew from some of the other charters that we had access to, particularly New Britain was a suggestion, and finally there was a suggestion that the preamble incorporate some reference to having roots and branches. And so I tried to do that.
Hatter's Roots creating a crown of modern diversity?
Hey,
Ooh!
feel free to strike,
I'm sorry?
add to,
A little
delete.
poetic.
Oh, do we have
Oh.
copies to share?
Ooh!
Could you read it?
Here's some extras.
Peter, would you read this, please?
You want me to read it?
Yeah, I certainly do.
Yeah, read it.
Let's put it this way, I'm not reading it.
It's that bad?
No, this is excellent.
No.
Very, very
no,
well
no.
done.
They're copies for us,
Rick,
that's
I
fine.
think you nailed
Thank
it.
you.
The electors of the city of Danbury have adopted this charter, which establishes a representative democracy through a balance of power shared between a strong mayor as the chief executive and an independent common council as a legislative body. The government thus created shall be entrusted with the solemn duty to provide a superior quality of life for its citizens by offering cost-effective municipal services while preserving the cultural, historical, and natural resources of this community. It shall be dedicated to the task of building upon a vibrant heritage derived from Hatter's roots, creating a crown of modern diversity. In the years to come, this government shall strive to work together with the residents of Danbury to enhance the position of this municipality as a premier place to live, work, and raise a family in a traditional yet progressive city.
I think it's excellent.
Nicely done. I will take comments from people. Anybody have questions, concerns, additions, deletions? Pardon me? Oh, yeah, Dr. Cronin, you are our official grammarian.
No, I
Do you
gotta
need-
look at this again, there's
Okay.
a lot in here.
Hyphenate
You got
cost effective.
25 phrases in one sentence, this is good.
Yeah. Do you need a red pen in order to give us a grade?
I have to look at it again. I'll double check it.
There's just one word in it that I don't like, and it's, I know that having a strong mayor is the form of government, but I don't know whether it's that readily understood by everyone that will be reading this preamble, and it has a negative connotation almost to me, and I would like to take that word out, just that one word. If-
No,
No, I think it describes the office.
yes.
The office has strong executive powers in the city. To take that out might imply a weakening of those duties.
But I think that the charter, when you look at the powers of the mayor, it speaks for, the powers that he does have, further on into the charter without having to say it.
I would caution you, and you have a good point, but a word of caution, as we go through this, one of the premises we may be addressing is taking some of this, quote, job description language out of the charter. Maybe not for the mayor, but certainly for some of the other directors' positions and things like, it'll be a topic of discussion down the road, Diane.
But I think that the powers of the mayor are not a job description. I mean, he has the power to appoint commissions, he has the power to hire department heads, he has a lot of powers that describe a strong mayor,
It's a good point.
without having to say it.
That's valid.
So that means, are we looking for a synonym for strong? Taking strong out and get a synonym for it?
No?
No.
She said just delete strong.
Oh, I know, but he's saying not to
Oh.
delete, so I'm saying,
I
is
think we
there
ought to keep it.
a choice of strong that could mean strong, but not the word strong?
Any other questions or
No,
comments?
that's-
Is this something you want to work on tonight, or do you want to look at this and come back and vote on something, or look for amended changes and things next time?
I'd like to look at
Look at
it,
it.
digest it a little bit, play with some of the words, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit next time.
Okay. I mean, this doesn't affect the running of the city.
No.
It is
No.
kind of window dressing. But I appreciate the guys that worked on this, because it's very difficult to create something out of whole cloth. And I'd like not to spend too much time on it, because literally it doesn't affect the running of the city, other than it is descriptive.
I know.
Okay? So everybody's got it, mark them up, bring them back
Yes.
for the next meeting, and this will be an agenda item at the next meeting, perhaps?
We could end on that.
But I don't want to cut off discussion. Does anyone have any other comments on this for now? Okay. So it just says that we're going to review and discuss. I don't even think we need to table it. Is that correct, Mr. Gottschalk? Okay. So that's done. And Peter, we all right?
Yeah.
Okay. If we could put words like self-evident in there, it could be Lincoln-esque, by the way, so.
Lincoln-esque?
Yeah. So-
I think the writer was striving for more of Madison.
Oh, we're going more for Madison than Lincoln. All right, good. Okay. The commission will discuss an annual limitation on non-referendum bonding. Who would like to give us the history on how we got to where we are? Nobody? Did I throw you? Can you tell me where we are in the charter? Where's the bonding language?
7:10, I think it is.
7:10, right? You'd think we'd have it memorized by now.
I can give you a quick recap if you would like.
Let's do a
Peter,
very
Would you
brief,
like to take it?
No, Bob, I'll follow your lead.
okay.
I'll just go from recall and start with when the whole bonding topic came up for discussion before the commission. Just prior to that, the chairman and I met with the director of finance in his office to invite him, for the purpose of inviting him to the commission and to help us understand the manner in which the city bonds and some benchmarks that they follow and some rules that the city follows in going to bonding, and also some interpretation. One of the interpretations that came out of that raised question in, I think, all of the commissioners' minds was the wording that the city could raise up to $500,000 without going to referendum. The question was, is this an annual amount, or is this a per bonding or per ordinance amount? There is a difference, as you are well aware of. From that, the Director of Finance came before the commission and suggested a different approach that was based on the grand list, and he had two trigger points. He had a trigger point. First of all, he had recommended a $2 million or $2.5 million bonding, and a trigger point that over a certain percentage of the grand list, if the total bonding exceeded that amount, then it would go to an automatic referendum. He had also put language in there that on the 2.5, if there was I forget what the wording was, but it was a referendum, if there was people could go out and collect signatures, a petitioned, I guess, referendum. And if they met the referendum requirements, the petitioning requirements, then that would go to referendum, i.e. that being the 2.5 million. So there was a two-tier level. I think there was some objections to those proposal, or to his proposal, at which time I had made a proposal basing it on a couple of different trigger points and based on a percent of, capping at it, based on a percent of net assets, which is a figure that appears in the financial reports of the city every year, and it's in its audit report. In addition to that cap, I suggested certain benchmarks that if they were exceeded, then it would go to a referendum. Those benchmarks are also included in the city's bonding, or in the city's budget, and in the city's audited financial statements. That was found too confusing. I then proposed at the end of that night, when the director was here, a cap of $5 million per annum. And I don't even think that was voted on. There was nobody seconded the motion, so the motion died. I made a motion to that effect. There was another attempt to to raise it to 2.5 million and come up with a different cap than what the Director of Finance did, but again, it was based on the grand list. And that motion failed. It was proposed by me, it was seconded, but it failed. The last vote that we took was made by Commissioner Bezade, just simply changing the language in the charter from $500,000 or $500,000 to $2.5 million, period. There was no other language changes. That's where we stand at this particular point. So the question, as you've heard from the public, was that this what used to be tradition, that the $500,000 figure traditionally was interpreted to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rick, was an annual amount, that all past mayors and common councils had considered that an annual amount. Let me inject something that was brought to my attention this week, that a previous mayor, Mayor Eriquez, when he found out about this multiple bonding, 5 projects adding up to $250 million, and it's quite legal. The mayor is legal in doing this.
2.5 million.
What?
Hang on.
2.5? Was 5 projects at 500,000. 2.5, I'm sorry. And we found out about the combined amount of this at 2.5 million. The mayor said that his counselor had always told him that the annual amount was $500,000 and it couldn't be on a project basis. So there's some misinterpretation somewhere, or excuse me, let me retract that. There was some different interpretations of this along the line. The point is, it adds confusion. The lack of language can be construed as either annual or a project basis. Council, I believe, is on both sides of the issue. So it's really kind of left up to us.
Okay.
I think that's where it stands.
So where we are now, if you look at 710, we have approved an ordinance that we approved on March 24th that kept all of the language the same, except that we raised the $500,000 limit to a $2.5 million limit. So that's really our discussion for tonight was, did we want to revisit that and make that or something else an annual cap and clarify the language? Because clearly, when you read this, there is no language specifying any kind of a cap, and this mayor has opted for the liberal interpretation, which is that it isn't an annual cap. Rick?
I can perhaps shed a little bit of light on this and yet not get you out of your dilemma.
Could you shed some light and get us out of the dilemma?
Getting you out of the dilemma is really a judgment call that I'm going to leave to you.
Okay.
But I can tell you that in 30 years, I never recall a mayor asking for an interpretation of this language. And it was always clear to me, and anyone cared to ask, that this was not an annual cap, that it was a cap that related to a purpose or a project for which the borrowing was sought. That interpretation was confirmed a month and a half ago in a conversation with bond counsel, who was equally shocked that there was even a question about whether this was annual or rather addressing a particular project or purpose. I had always assumed when borrowings arrived before the Common Council and were always pegged to the maximum amount, that this was as a result of a natural reluctance on the part of mayors and council members to borrow at all, but recognizing the needs of the city and the annual need to borrow for our many purposes, that's what prevented them from seeking bonding through multiple ordinances, each avoiding the need for a referendum by staying under that trigger. But I can tell you, there's no language in there that would justify the position that this is an annual limit.
Yeah. Okay. So, How does everybody feel about that? What we've done is we've raised it to 2.5 million without needing to go to referendum, and in effect, that does allow a mayor to do a serial amount of these and go much higher. What we're here to do is make a recommendation that the council either accepts or rejects. Are we happy with where we are with this, or do we want to put clarifying language in that there is a limit, or leave it as it is where it's clearly no limit? I will, Diane.
I would like to put some clarifying language in it, and I think that Julia Reese actually suggested, right after the dollar amount, if we put per annum, it would really clarify that it's in, I would really advocate making it on an annual basis, the 2.5 million.
So it's a one-time number at 2.5 million. Any other?
What do you mean by one-time number?
Yeah.
It's not a one-time
Well,
number.
it's-
Anything over 2.5 million a year would require a
Would
referendum.
require a referendum, yes.
Right,
I'm
but
sorry.
it can be any amounts up to 2.5 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cum
The
amount.
combination.
So
Cum amount up to
so a
2.5
cumulative amount, once it reaches 2.5 million and $1 would have to go to referendum. That's what you're thinking?
Yes.
So, just to clarify for myself, I understand what you just said. Does that mean you're not saying then that you're limiting to a project? Because I wouldn't want to see us say, we limit that and then all of a sudden do, only one project or two a year. Sitting from where I sit in a school site, there's projects that are still not done. That makes me uncomfortable. I mean, I understand you want the cap, and I understand that because certainly you don't want referendums going out all the time and get a pet project done somewhere. You know what I'm saying? When there are much more immediate things that need to be done. So if you do this to the 2.5, just means once that's over, you have to go to referendum.
You have to go to referendum.
And you can go as many times as you want.
Yes, there's no limit to the number of times you can go to the question is, when does the city have to go to referendum?
Right.
Because
That's-
theoretically, under the current limit, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if they want to do a new roof on every school and it was just under $500,000, we could
Oh, no,
literally
no,
do
I understand that.
15 of those without going to referendum. Now, the question is, do we want that? Do we want to limit the mayor and the common, because the mayor can't do this without common council approval. Do we want to limit the mayor and the common council to some number
Per year.
per year, however you'd like to
You're not
define?
limiting them. What you're doing is you're saying anything over
Over that.
2.5
Go to the
million,
public.
you have to go to referendum. So it's not, the only limitation here is seeking public input and approval.
Yep.
And some of the questions that were raised during the discussion of this was there sufficient lead time for a mayor to do that? That's why the logic was to raise it to 2.5 million if there was emergency repairs or something that needed to be done, like a bridge. I think that was the one example that kept coming up, that the $2.5 million would take care of that. So your intention here would be that once, we could either have one project at 2.5 million, just under 2.5 million, would not have to go to referendum, or an accumulation of projects equaling $2.5 million, then we would have to go to referendum. So
Yeah, any borrowing over 2.5 million for the year would need to go to referendum.
Right,
And then there's a
If you
referendum
do that.
protocol, so
right.
we'd have to then.
Yes.
Now, the other suggestions was that we do a cap based on some percentage of a number. And I think that was one of the ones that the bonding council, correct me if I'm wrong, had endorsed. And that was when David was in. Do you recall that? Right.
I do recall a proposal by bond council was considerably more complicated in it, and I believe it provided for one or more triggers.
I think the advantage, it was complicated, which is, I think, why we initially rejected it. The advantage was, 10 years from now, some mayor's going to be dealing with $2.5 million and saying, well, that's like $500,000 now. It's going to require another charter revision in order to raise the $2.5 million cap if we put it in as a firm number. That's why we went down this road so many times. Any other comments?
One other note linking to this whole bonding issue. The thing that triggers this is the capital budget process, and it gets back to what the doctor referred to. If you looked carefully at the capital budget, what several of us found disturbing was that projects that were labeled urgent have been pushed out into the out years, into the third and sometimes the fourth year. Have a hard time reconciling, if a project is urgent, how they keep getting pushed out. Urgency doesn't seem to go along with affordability from the administration's perspective. So even though it's urgent, seems to be a reluctance to go to bonding over some of these issues. Hence, there appears to be a backlog in capital projects. And I think we all agree that's not what we want the city to be in any sort of state of disrepair or having to compromise the city's assets.
Okay.
So how does that, putting that limit, help what you're...
Well, I guess it's more of a political question, Peter. If a mayor feels that these things are needed, he should be able to go to the public and state, these are the things that are needed in the capital budget to maintain the city's assets. If there has been a reluctance in the past, maybe that there is some sort of rationale behind it, which I can't explain. It's beyond my pay grade, as they say. But, this cap will certainly will be a hindrance, or it could be a hindrance to that kind of, progressive thinking.
So the cap, in a way, is going to limit the city more so than the language we have now.
It could. Let me say it could. But again, it's going to depend. If we just leave the language as it is, what mayor is going to be willing enough to undertake? The capital project budget was $347 million. Even at 2.5 or 10 times 2.5, it's going to take a long way to approve all these projects if, in fact, they're all good projects. So I think, in addition to the bonding, once we get into the budgeting aspect, I think that's something we have to pay attention to, is the capital budget process.
I really believe that the $2.5 million is enough to cover emergency repairs, so the city's not going to be in a position where our capital assets are going to degrade, and anything above $2.5 million really is something the voters should vote on, like an expansion to the senior center or a police station or something like that. And so you would want that to go to referendum anyway. And also, there is, the Connecticut statutes do have a maximum amount of bonding that we can, or indebtedness that we can have. So there is that other overriding cap that we can't exceed anyway. So the
That's on
mayor
total
wouldn't be able
indebtedness.
to.
Is that the total indebtedness you're talking about?
Yes.
The $947 million?
Yes.
Yeah. That's what worries me. There is no cap between now and the $947 million.
Any other questions, comments? I'll entertain a motion if someone would like to make a motion.
I don't know what it would make.
Diane.
I'd like to make a motion to add the word per annum after the $2.5 million in the current language that we voted on and approved.
Okay, a motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded that we add the words per annum after the word, after the number $2,500,000 to section 7-10A. Motion's been made and seconded. Any conversation around that? Questions or comments?
Yeah, I really would love to see us get to a progressive percentage of something as opposed to just this cap. And the rationale being, I'll be satisfied, Diane, with your motion. versus what we have. But I would really like the commissioners to consider, some sort of percentage that goes over a bigger amount. Reason being is, suppose the bridge instead of $2.5 million is $3 million. And then we have to wait to go through a referendum to repair the bridge.
I think, but talk to bond council, but
That's the only thing I
theoretically
have
it's
to
the
say.
case, or they could start it. Does anyone else have any
That's
questions?
the only comment I have.
Questions,
Can I just make
comments?
one
Yes,
additional
Diane.
comment? There was a proposal from the public that we actually put a provision in the charter to review it periodically, like every 10 years. So if we had a provision to review the charter every 10 years, we could revisit this bonding number every 10 years, and so it wouldn't get into such a state where it's not, modern, with modern times.
So that there's automatic reviews to the charter.
Yes.
Okay. That may be, and we'll be working in August and September. Okay.
The problem with that is, though,
John.
there can be an automatic review, but if it doesn't pass through common council, it's not going anywhere anyway.
Right. That's, everything we're doing here goes to council, and
Mhm.
this may or may not pass on from here. Any other questions or comments?
I'm against that annual cap. I think that we have a political process in Danbury. This language has worked pretty well for a long time. It may have been dormant, not being used by anybody, but it was there. It certainly hasn't been abused for 30 years. If we do get somebody who's spent, they'll be voted out pretty quickly. And that's been the tradition. I think that if we hinder our government in Danbury, I think we put ourselves at a little risk in terms of the words. So I'm personally opposed to it for that reason.
Any other comments?
I agree with that. I think this language has worked because of the people who were elected, both on the council and the mayor. They have sought to put a reasonable spin when they interpreted borrowing, and that's what's happened over the years. It has worked well. It has served us well. I think the number was too low. I think the number of 2.5 million is probably about where it should be. I believe that it's not just the mayor going to be able to run carte blanche because he has to go to the council. So there hasn't been, I know this, I don't want to see us revisit something that we've already voted on. We've already voted on this, and because this mayor has decided that he thinks it's per project and he's throwing it out, that we're at sort of a knee-jerk reaction to this, and that's not why we're here. We're not here to manage the city. We're not here to tell the mayor how to manage the city. I think we have to give them the tools to do it correctly, and not just the mayor, but the council also. And for us to sit and think that we know that 2.5 million is enough for any one given year, I think is way beyond the scope of what this commission is supposed to be doing. I think that's up to our government, and that's, all we can do is give them the structure, and all we're doing is shackling him. And I'm not sure, I've talked with Bob a number of times about trigger points and things like that, so I want to be progressive, and I think this is the simplest way to be progressive, which is leave it up to the mayor, leave it up to the council, and let the people come to them. Comments are well taken from the public at this meeting, but they're not standing out in the hallway. I think it's worked, and I think we should continue exactly what's here at 2.5 million. I think the way it's voted, that's the way it should be.
Because I think if you think about it, in the sense of referendum, we also don't want to be putting our city into the referendum mode. Every time you have to, if you get to that, let's just face facts. Look at the price of gas, it's $4.11 in some pumps. So if we save that in that amount, that's fine. If we do it per annum, then we may be pushing ourselves into a referendum all the time. We'll be doing referendum for this, referendum for that, referendum for that. And you all just said, and many of our people out here just said, I think you said it quite well, we don't get very many people out to vote. So you may be shot down on a referendum because you didn't get, the people, what you really needed didn't occur because you didn't get the voting, to go as well as we should have. So I'm not sure, are we putting ourselves into a referendum mode? I mean, we don't need to do that either.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Yeah. Any other comments or questions?
I just have one other question. When David St. Hilaire spoke with us, he gave us a quote, bonding in excess of 0.07% of the grand list. Was that what he decided was the 2.5 million
No,
at that point?
No, that was the cap. That was a cap. That come up to somewhere around, let's see, 7.4 billion. Doctor, if you want to do the math real
No,
quick.
I think it's a little more,
Times
Wait a
little more
minute,
than
that
five, little more than
five-
5
It was
million, I
around
think.
about, it was 5 to
Ballpark
6
5 to
million.
6, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
So-
and that would be a moving number. So,
Right.
as the grand
And he
list
was-
went up,
Right.
so that solved one of our issues, which was if we put a
would
number in
change.
here,
Right.
15 years from now, the number's a bad number.
Right.
Right.
But this .07 translated to about 5 million?
About $5 million, yes.
Okay, that's what it was.
And that would be, under that line.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Under that proposal, Joan, what we voted on, the 2.5 million, any project, the mayor could go up to 2.5 million on projects, and the cap then become that floating number, a percentage of the grand list, which in this case is roughly, I think, somewhere around $5 to $6 million. So then if it went over that, bonding for a year, then it would require a referendum, which would suggest that there's plenty of lead time to go out and do that. Those types of things. You're not going to have, emergencies all the time to bring projects to the forefront.
Okay. Any other comments?
No.
Okay. I'd like to ask a technical question. Per annum, would that be the language we would use? Does that then mean per fiscal year or per calendar year? Do we need to be careful around what language we use?
Yes, you need to be careful about what language you use. And I'm not sure that in order to accomplish your mission, you don't need to change other language in here. I can tell you, for example, that when bond counsel structured a tentative proposal, his language was considerably more detailed than what's found in the charter today, and dealt in separate paragraphs with the trigger and with a cumulative trigger. So depending on what you do today, I would recommend that you
That this become a sense of...
get a concept together, and then I'll present some language to you next time that attempts to mirror that concept.
Okay. So...
As I recall, we have not heard from the bond counsel. He was to phone in that night.
That's right.
But the meeting was running late or something, and we did not.
That's right.
Would it serve any purpose, Mr. Chairman, to do that? One of the things that I liked about what he had to say, or what was reported to have to say, is the bond counsels would view this recommendation that came from the director, financial director, and the bond as favorable and potentially could lead to an improvement in the bond rating and be viewed as more progressive that the city was investing in its assets, which was one of the concerns that from what I understand, the bond people had expressed some concerns about.
By raising it to 2.5, or by having no limit, or by having
By
the
having
moving
this-
target?
This
The
moving target and these trigger points that Rick is referring to.
Okay.
His proposal, by the way, was tied to grand list, some percentage of grand list, which you would know based on today's numbers, equated to one number with respect to a per project limit and another number with respect to a cumulative limit.
That was too complicated.
So, and that is what we ran into last time. When we got more detail,
Right.
we ultimately walked away from it.
One final consideration that just came to mind. If you recall, when we met with the financial director in his office, he recommended to us that we not leave an open-ended bonding in this charter, that that kind of power should be capped,
Yep.
was his word.
Okay. Other comments?
I'm sorry, Bob, did he say that when he was here in front of the commission?
No, he said it in his office.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? I will try your minds. So the motion is that we add the words per annum after the dollar figure in section 7-10A, which would in effect put some type of cap, annual cap, with language to be provided. So the question becomes, do we want a cap or do we not want a specific cap? If you're in favor of this motion, you are voting for a cap. Okay? All in favor? Please raise your...
Mr. Chairman, before you just do that, I don't know if you correctly summarized what was on the table. I think the motion was just to add the words per annum after two
Yes, or
and a half million.
whatever verbiage is legally acceptable
Okay.
to accomplish that.
Do you think we need to amend the motion to say that we will, if we vote for the cap, that we will then get language back from Mr. Gottschalk? Is that your concern?
Yeah. So the idea would be a $2.5 million per annum, whether it's fiscal annum or annual annum cap.
With language to be provided
Fair enough.
by the Commission's counsel.
Is that language, can we modify that language?
When it comes back to us,
It's gonna be like the other preamble.
yes.
Now, let me be, what's in my mind, Mr. Chairman, I would like to leave open the option of a floating cap by getting some input from the bonding council.
Well, now we're revisiting the entire issue, I believe. That would...
I think this is important enough that we should, be comfortable with what our decision is, as opposed to just forcing either a per annum or accepting what we have as it exists. Now, maybe that's just me. I don't feel comfortable where we've come out on this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just concerned that once we took a vote, I'm concerned that we've reopened this to begin with. And we can't just keep reopen. So the question becomes, in Robert's rules, can we just, in effect, say, well, we did this, but now we've decided we didn't do it? And I guess I'm uncomfortable with that. I don't want to keep going back over the same territory. Certainly happy to get new language and make a vote, but if you're saying, help me out here, everybody,
Well,
where do we want to go with?
My question is
We
it
want to vote on the
because
motion.
it's that language based around his term of fiscal year versus annual year? Is that the clarification you're looking for? Or is it just, what is the clarification in
It's
language?
fiscal year, it's what it should be.
Mr. Chairman, I think we have a motion, and I think we're duty-bound to
First.
vote on that
Point of
motion.
order, we do
And I
have,
don't want to tie anyone's hands to it, but I think that's what we have to do. And if the Assistant Chair thinks that motion should be amended, I think he can ask that it be amended. I'm not sure what the proper way to do that, but I
okay,
think...
the motion on the floor is
The
to add
motion on
the
the floor is
words
per annum, and I think that's it.
per annum, and then
Whatever that means, it
does
means.
Mr. Gottschalk then come back to us with clarifying language, or have we stuck the words per annum into our charter?
I don't think anyone can come back with, if that's voted in the yes, I don't think that's what the language is.
That's what the language will be.
I mean, to the
But that may
extent that we're
not-
revisiting this at all, because we've already voted on this. We've already done this once. I don't know why we're back doing it again. I really don't.
It's a great question. Do you want to clarify for us, if we add language that may affect the governance of the city, how does that get corrected?
I think what you're asking me is whether or not this commission has the authority to consider action previously taken without what you've been hearing a lot about, which is motions to reconsider. And the answer is yes, you always have the power to go back and revisit items that you appear to have resolved and settled at earlier meetings, because each meeting that you have is a separate session of this commission. And at each session, as Robert's Rules defines it, you are free to take up anything that's on your agenda. Whether that's a good idea or not is a separate question, and that's up to you.
And that's what I'm speaking to. I never thought that we couldn't, I just
Okay.
don't think it's a good idea.
Got it.
We've traveled this road.
Okay, well, we have a point of order. There is a motion on the floor to add the words per annum to section 7-10A. All in favor, please raise your hands. Mr. Torian, Cervello, King. All opposed? Swanson, Buzade, Mead, and Comstock. So the motion does not pass. Okay. Thank you for your patience, everybody. That was about as difficult as I thought it was going to be. Okay, number 5 on our agenda. The commission will discuss the length of term and term limitation for the following elective offices: mayor, town clerk, city treasurer, city clerk, council members, board of education, zoning commission members, zoning board of appeals members. Okay. Diane has handouts. Did you pass them down that way? Okay. And if you notice the handouts, it lists cities with the length of terms, recall provisions, councils, town clerk, city clerk, treasurers, board of ed, zoning commissions, planning commissions, and zoning board of appeals. Thank you, Diane.
I guess I'll just walk you through the document.
Thank you.
When I was going through, a lot of cities had certain commissions and boards appointed rather than elected, so I didn't put the terms when they were appointed, and afterwards I regretted the decision, but I didn't have time to go back and revisit it, so if you want me to, I can put them in, because a lot of the appointed positions did have term lengths, even though they were appointed, but I didn't capture that in this table. But also, if I put unknown, it means that it was not provided in the charter, and it might have been elsewhere, like in an ordinance or something, but I just couldn't capture that information from the charters that I had. And not applicable in this chart means that that municipality didn't have that function. So I guess I'll just go through the summary. 2 cities have 4-year terms for mayor, Bridgeport and Stamford. 2 cities have recall provisions, Bristol and Milford. 1 city has a 4-year term for council, and that is Stamford. As far as the town clerk, city clerk, I actually tried to, in this chart, also capture which municipalities had a town clerk and a city clerk, or one or the other. So 3 cities have a town clerk and no city clerk, and that's Bristol, Hamden, and Milford. Bristol, by the way, has that as an appointed position. It's not an elected position. 1 city has a city clerk and no town clerk. That's New Haven. 4 cities have both city clerk and town clerks: Bridgeport, Danbury, New Britain, and Waterbury. 3 cities have treasurers. Most cities, except New Haven, elect Board of Education members. New Haven actually appoints Board of Education members. And the terms range from 2 to 4 years. 1 oddball city, Stamford, has a 3-year term for Board of Education. That most were either 2 or 4. And it was difficult to extrapolate information regarding planning and zoning because most municipalities have these as appointed officials rather than elected. So it was hard to really capture information regarding those. But I did capture. Milford was the 1 municipality that actually had a combined zoning and planning. I was able to capture that while I was going through this exercise.
Well, that's great. That's a great deal of work, Diane. That is very well done.
Thank you.
Okay, questions, comments, and direction. Where do we go from here? Who would you like to hear from before we go down this road? And do you have any points you'd like to make before we could bring people in?
Mr. Chairman, are you inclined to invite people to come talk to us as we did with planning, and zoning, bonding?
If you feel that that would be helpful, do we want to review this? First question is this something we want to take a look at? Or are we happy with where things are and not even bother with it? If we're going to make changes, I think we certainly want to
Want to listen to somebody.
bring people in. And, but if you don't want to, and we can make changes without listening to anybody.
Well, but we already did, didn't we? We had a public hearing, and we did hear a number of comments from various people
Yes.
regarding the length of terms and term limits and a lot of other issues. If most of us will recall that back in December. And there were some strong opinions on that.
Do we have any opinions? Do we want to go down this road and look at terms and term limits?
I would like to, because
I think we need to, 'cause
I think we need to
Okay.
change some of the terms.
I think, like Peter said, there was a lot of concern. That was one of the issues that was brought forth to us
Okay.
to look at it.
Good, then, well, we've already had a public session on it. Do we want to hear from people in various offices, or do we want to just have that? I'm happy to have that discussion now and figure out whether or not we need to hear from other people or get other opinions. But we're certainly opinionated enough, we can.
Well, we wanted to talk to
I meant that in a
the
loving way.
city clerk anyway.
Yes,
Right.
city, we plan on having the city clerk come in,
Again,
and we're going to have someone from planning and zoning come in. Do we want anybody else to come in, or do we want to just go down, we can go down this list and just talk about, the first thing is the mayor's position. You want to talk about the mayor's 2-year terms, and we can talk about it tonight. Doesn't mean we have to make a decision tonight, but we certainly can.
Well, I'd like to talk about that tonight.
Okay, Peter?
I think we've heard quite a bit at our public hearing. I did have an opportunity to go back and look at the submissions from the many people who came and addressed to us, and happily, they all gave us written materials. And I do recall some of the comments by other people. I think it's fair for us to look at the length of term of our elected officials, particularly the mayor. I know that many people who run for office really don't like running every 2 years. And they really don't like having an election every 2 years. It's expensive, it's time-consuming, and it seems that in today's era, it's harder and harder to get people to come out and vote. It's harder and harder to get people to pay attention as to what's going on in city government, probably any government. It's harder and harder for people to find out information, even with the internet, about city government. Our local newspaper pretty much has ceased to exist in terms of covering City Hall. There are fewer and fewer citizens who are interested in the operation of government, and I really have no idea who pays attention as to what's done. And I thought about all that, and I thought about the decrease in interest, and it led me to the opposite conclusion in terms of terms. It led me to think that maybe the shorter terms are better if people aren't watching what's going on and aren't paying attention as to what's going on. If there isn't as much vigilance, if there isn't a reporter, I think that it becomes more important to have more frequent accountability of some sort in front of the electorate. And I thought about it a lot, because my original thought was, geez, it's awful they have to run every 2 years. It seems like there's an election, there's an election every year in Danbury, and it just seemed a little onerous, looking at all the yard signs, putting them up or taking them down. But then I thought about it some more, and given the fact that there is a lack of, I believe, political involvement by many people, that I think it's not a bad thing to have accountability as frequently as for 2 years. I talked to some people who have been mayors, and I thought about the term of the mayor. They don't like running, but I think a strong, effective mayor has never not been returned to office, at least in my lifetime. It hasn't certainly been thwarted in their program by the fact that they have to campaign, and they're available. And then, of course, I was confronted with one memory that I do recall, and I don't know if it was fair to him or not, but I recall the term of James Dyer, and he was indicted. The whole city of Danbury was put under a cloud. That cloud did not linger because very quickly he was voted out of office, and we moved on. It might not have been fair to James Dyer, but it certainly benefited the city of Danbury and all of us who lived here that our mayor would not operate in the mayor's office under a cloud. And we don't have to look too far around the state of Connecticut to see other offices of mayor where the mayors operated under the cloud of an indictment. We can look to Waterbury, we can look down to Bridgeport, we can look all over the place. But in Danbury, happily, he was voted out of office fairly quickly. And in fact, I believe his trial took place 2 years after he lost his election. So, just think of that. If we had a mayor and even if we had a recall provision, we would have been, as a city, locked up in this drama in our city hall when we didn't have to be. So I sort of persuaded myself that I liked the 2-year term for mayor. And unfortunately for the other people along the list, they sort of follow along in my thought process, as to the council. I'm not so sure about the Board of Education, to be honest with you, Mr. Chairman. I think that that's a hard position. They spend an awful lot of time on it. The only reason why I would want to keep it for 2 years is they get to be a little insular because they work so hard, or they have long meetings. So I'm not sure about their term, but I'm pretty happy with the 2-year term.
Okay.
I think that the Board of Education does have a 4-year term.
Thank you for, that should probably be too.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Dr.
Um,
Cronin?
I agree with you that people don't come out to vote, and they should, but I don't think making the term is really the related way to get them out to vote. I think that might even make them lazy. I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be that approach. Just if you leave the 2-year term, isn't the way to get people to come out to vote and know what's going on in their city. I think there's other venues and ways that we need to work on to make that happen. I'm looking at it from the perspective of effectiveness, person coming right on board as the mayor, brand new person coming in, he's our mayor, 2 years. And in 2 years, you gotta learn a lot, okay? And you have to make as many people happy as you can. 2 years comes around, you're right, they do get elected back in, but that necessarily doesn't mean that's the right way, the best thing, I guess, I'm trying to say. I think the mayor should have a longer term, 4 years. Like you said earlier, we can take people out if they're not, we can vote them out if we want to, or there's other things that happen, like you just said, the case with James Dyer. I don't think just because people don't come out to vote, we should give a short term for somebody, just because of that issue. I think there's other ways we can get people out to vote, and I think we have to really work on that. And not this commission, so to speak, but people in the whole city have to do it. Newspaper is not a helpful venue at all, as you mentioned earlier. We basically don't have much of anything coming out of the newspaper in ways to help people get encouraged to even work in city government, whether it's an appointed position or it's a planning group or a commission. So I think my perspective on it is I'm thinking of the idea of effectiveness and knowing the job and knowing your people and knowing where you got to go with certain things. 4 years is a very quick time. 2 years is quicker. That's just mine. And I would almost rather see the Board of Ed less than 4 years. For a lot of other reasons. Sometimes people get in there for 4 years and you have people sitting on the Board of Ed who don't really understand the operations of what goes into what they're voting on and what they're saying that needs to be done. Many of them are not even educators. Not that you have to be, but they don't have a perspective toward education and they sit there for 4 years. To me, I'd rather see that reversed. I'd rather see 2 years for Board of Ed and get the people motivated and moving around and thinking, whereas the elected, other officials be in there for.
Thank you. Diane, did you have a comment?
No.
Raise your hand. I'm sorry. Anybody else? Questions, comments? What do you think? What do you want?
Don't
Paul?
worry, this can be changed. He said we can change it
We can
whenever
revisit.
we want.
That's right.
I think if any of the commissioners think we need to have someone to come in to talk, I would more than be
I
willing
agree with
to
you.
let them voice that opinion and have people come in. Personally, I don't think I need anyone to come in and talk, certainly not about agenda number 5. As far as, agenda number 6 is, I think, a different story. Agenda item number 6.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I think if you go down through the term lengths that you see in the list that Diane, and kudos to you, Diane, for all of her work, there's a reason most of the cities are 2 years. And I think it's going to be consistent. If I'm going to ask the mayor, if I'm going to give the mayor the tool of a $2.5 million and not tie his hands, I think he has to then, every 2 years, visit the city of, the people of the city of Danbury and tell them, and sell himself, and sell what he's done. I think it's Dr. Cronin's idea that we can get more people to vote. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think people are going to vote when they're going to vote, and that's all that's ever going to happen. Reality check. When people need to vote, they did. If the term of James Dyer is evident, the people, when they needed to, they stepped up to the plate and did what probably was best for the city. And I trust the people of the city of Danbury. And to the extent that the mayor is going to have to visit the people every 2 years and go out and shake their hands and go meet them face to face, I think he should, as should the council. I think the town clerk does that on a daily basis. In regards to the Board of Education, I don't know. I don't know where I stand on that. I'm not sure if I don't know if I would change it. I don't think it's been bad enough that it needs to be changed. I think the people that have served and the board in a comprehensive manner has served the city well, served the kids of the city of Danbury well, and so I don't think there's enough to warrant a change.
Okay. So far, I'm not hearing anybody thinking that they want to extend the mayor's term to 4 years. Was there any?
Oh, I did say just 4. I mean, I think more than 2.
Oh, okay.
Obviously going 2, 4, 6, 8.
Anybody else have any questions or comments down? Because I think that we've,
My only comment on it is, looking at the terms of office, I really think we spend too much time running for election, not just nationally, but on the state and local levels. And that's one of the reasons why I would like to see the mayor's term extended to 4 years. I spoke to, just yesterday, 2 people on the zoning commission who were new members, and both of them said it's taken almost the whole year just to get up to speed on what was before the zoning commission. And they still don't understand a lot of the process. So when they have to just get up to speed and then they're running for election again, I think it leads to a situation where we wind up with people not familiar with the issues on the commission, that we don't allow them enough time to learn the position that they're in.
That's my point of view.
okay.
It takes a while.
Is that, we call that like the learning curve is pretty high?
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, like she's saying, once you get in there, you just figure out your feet are wet, you know what you're doing, and then the next year you're running for office again. And that's a whole year running, campaigning or whatever.
There's nothing wrong with seeking re-election. I mean, once you got your feet wet and you can, run for election the next time, and then if you're good at it, you'll get re-elected and you'll have a 4-year term, so.
That's true, but you wind up spending a lot of your time running for office, campaigning.
Joan, can I ask you this? Do you think that there are people who, because it's only a 2-year term office, who don't run? I mean, who would otherwise, we'd have a bigger pool of potential people running if the terms were longer?
I don't know whether that would, and whether that would work for most of those offices. I think what people tend to do is look upon those offices as throwaway offices instead of what they really are. And, I mean, people on the zoning commission, the planning commission, have a lot of influence about what this city looks like. And I think if we made the term longer, we might give more importance to the positions. I mean, we do that with the Board of Education because there is so much technical information these people have to deal with. And I think it might work the same way also if we looked at the zoning commission, or zoning and planning, however we decide to do this, in the same way, with all of this technical information that they need to know, and treat it as more than just, you know, something to stick somebody on because they've worked for the party for a long time.
Dr. Cronin?
Well, another advantage to the 2 years is that people don't have to make a 4-year commitment, because if they've got another career, and this is a full-time job, that they can take a hiatus from their current career to be, you know, it's more enticing to be a shorter term, you know, to get candidates, I think.
I don't think I recall ever asking anybody that question, but now that we're here at this point of debate, I am curious as to whether or not we get enough potential candidates or people interested in running for all these offices with the present term limitation, just that issue alone. I mean, are people more inclined to run if it's a longer term, or less inclined, which is your point?
I'm still bent on the effectiveness piece, but that's another story. But the questions we're having, then maybe that's more the reason, Chairman, we should have people who are in these offices come and tell us if they're honest, you know.
I really think the pool will be smaller.
With a
Asking
long-
someone to run for 4 years.
For the longer term.
With a longer term, they're saying, no, I can't make that kind of commitment.
They would know the term before they would run.
No, they would, yeah, but I think a reality check would be, we may have a smaller pool.
But if we wind up with a combination of the planning and zoning, we'd have fewer seats to fill. We might wind up with,
I may not be right, I'm just saying.
Well-
It's a reality check.
My experience has been, I've been asked to run at the end of the ballot several times because they couldn't fill in enough names. And that would have been planning and zoning and things like, I ran for the Board of Ed also, Peter. I can see that smile on your face. And I did have a 4-year term that darn near killed me, I will tell you that also.
See what I mean?
I will tell you, 4 years is a very
That
long
one might be better on too.
time on the Board of Ed. But my experience when I was involved with the Republican Party was, it was very difficult to fill in the end of the ballot. That you could get council members, the mayor, typically there were a few people that wanted that. Council was fairly easy to get people for, but by the time you got down to the end, you ran out of people, which is one of the advantages that we've been told for planning and zoning. So, again, the question is, do we want to change it or leave it? And if we want to change it, how do you want to do it? Do you want us to invite people to come and talk to us? We could get the heads of the Democratic and the Republican Party, and maybe they can talk to us a little bit. If they'll come in to tell us whether it's, or we can do it, you can call them, since you know who, your chairman is, or call the council members and find out from them what they feel about that, or do we have enough information now? I mean, I'll take a motion if anyone wants to make a motion. Or we'll sit here.
There's a risk.
We'll just solve each other.
You're out of order.
Actually, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no motion.
I wanted to ask you, if you think if you've increased the zoning, let's say there's planning and zoning together, or they're separate, if you increased it to 4 years, would there be more people to run and easier to fill at the end?
I suspect not.
I think it's at the end
it's-
because of what it is as opposed to,
Yeah, I think
The length of the
a two-year commit, and certainly on the volunteer side, a 2-year commitment, in my opinion, is easier to do. I'll sign up, I'll do it for 2 years. I got into this thing because this was going to take a couple of months. I mean, that's how I'm here. So,
He wants to make a motion.
Mr. Torian?
I'm gonna support your motion.
I forgot where we are, what are we doing?
Well, I haven't heard a motion yet, and happy to entertain one, but hearing none, what I would do is simply move on. This can always come back up again. Then the next step is that we will hear from the city clerk and the treasurer, because we have specific questions about those
That was
offices.
what the motion was going to be, so there.
So you would say, leave this, we will think, this is kind of like the preamble.
Oh, yeah?
It's going to germinate a little bit.
I said that earlier.
You said it's like the preamble? Okay. Well, hearing no motion, and I want to be sure I give everybody an opportunity to make a motion, but hearing none, we will then move on. And at the next meeting, we will have a specific conversation about, hopefully, the city clerk and treasurer in addition to planning and zoning.
So specifically, we'll invite the treasurer and the city clerk to come and address us.
Yes. Okay. Now, item 6 on our agenda is to discuss the charter requirement for a city clerk and a treasurer. So should we take a couple minutes and do that? Would anyone like to discuss it?
Not me.
Well,
Pete and I are going to be quiet.
if they are going to come, let's discuss it after we hear what they have to say.
Absolutely.
Good idea.
That works for me.
And then, I mean, arguably, the potential that we eliminate those positions, we don't have to discuss their terms at all.
That's true.
I mean, you don't want to put the cart before the horse, but there's not,
You trying to tell us something?
we never know what they're going to say.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. Okay, it is nearly 8:30. I don't see anything else on my agenda. I'm sorry, Mr. Gottschalk.
I just wanted to clean up a couple of loose ends before you've reached the end of your agenda, correct?
We have.
All right. One loose end had to do with the description of the jurisdictional limits of the city of Danbury. That's contained in one of the early sections, maybe it's 1-2, a very long description by meets and bounds and so
The
forth.
poetic description.
That's highly poetic. I think through a misunderstanding, the engineering department began conversations in order to map this, because you recall where we left it was you were inclined to go with a substitution of some language which would make reference to a map on file in the town clerk's office. So a conversation germinated in the engineering department about acquiring such a map. And where it was left, with no action taken downstairs, is that there are two ways to go. Both of them cost money. The first costs an awful lot of money. In order to map this based on GIS surveys, and I'm not sure what else, taking a surveyor out, is $110,000. There's no interest in that. The less aggressive approach would be to create a compilation plan based on existing maps, and that is $6,000. I told them not to spend even $6,000.
Thank you.
Thank you. But I thought I would report that back to you, because it might inform your thinking. Second loose end was when you need to report and what your deadlines are. I indicated
Are you
last...
concerned about our deadlines?
Not at all. This is, I think, going to crystallize for you
Oh, yeah.
toward the end of the summer. But what I indicated to you last time was that my recollection was that the draft report was due at the end of the year or early in 2009, and I was half right. Your deadline is 1/1/09. And that relates to the submission of your draft report. All right, that's you have maximum of 16 months and by statute, and the Common Council gave you until the first of the year. Finally, I just wanted to indicate to you that based on your request last time, I contacted Paul Jaber. Paul is available on the 9th of June. We have not yet poked and prodded at zoning and planning commission members. other than preliminary email?
I did send an email to everybody on the commission and a letter to anybody who had no email address. And to date, I received not one response other than Arnie Finaldi was away on vacation.
So having Arnie Finaldi on vacation was the good news. If you would like us to, we can,
Subpoena them?
Do it again.
yeah.
Do it again, we can do it.
No, don't use those words.
Whenever you want, right? As many times as you want.
And that's all I have.
So you
Great.
go to January.
Okay, so everyone knows we have till 1/1 of '09, which was a little longer than I thought we had.
Thank heavens.
Anything else for this commission that we would like to do? I didn't hear a motion regarding the maps. Do we need to discuss that at the next agenda meetings?
Well, now-
110,000? Should I say that?
Yes,
Is there-
we
is
do
there a-
have a question
Is there a
concerning
recall
maps.
provision for commissioners? Because we could vote to spend the $110,000.
No, I mean, my thought would be, is there a way we could draw the map so we could include valuable taxable property into Danbury and increase the tax rate?
Like annex part of Richfield or
Mr.
something like
Gottschalk,
that?
do you have a comment?
I'm sorry, I have one other item, and that has to do with the conversation you're having about length of terms. To the extent that it bears on it, I want you to know that although you'll see that in 2 municipalities, recall provisions exist, you do not have authority to put such a provision in the charter. The 2
No
municipalities that have them by virtue of special act.
Special acts in order to put in a recall provision.
So if you're inclined to increase the term length because you think you can incorporate a corresponding recall provision,
You can't.
you can't.
It's very interesting, thank you.
And
That's
really
a-
special act.
Very interesting.
That's very-
That's great to know, because if we were extending terms, I would think we would want a recall provision. so. Okay, any other questions, comments? We know then what we're doing for the next meeting. Peter, we'll talk to you about that. And if we could get more planning and zoning members here, I think that would be fabulous.
And the next meeting is
June 9th.
June 9th is the next meeting because of Memorial Day. Anything else anyone would like to bring before the commission?
It's a Monday.
May I have a motion's been made to adjourn?
Second.
Second, any discussion? All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?